I feel like we've all been there, right? You see this absolutely gorgeous piece of technology online.
Oh, yeah. The marketing is always so good.
Exactly. The modern digital camera is basically an engineering marvel.
Huh.
I mean, it's got the processing power of a supercomputer, a sensor that basically sees in the dark, and it's got this minimalist body that looks like, it belongs in an art museum.
Right, it looks perfect on a desk.
It does.
Oh.
But then there's this one massive problem, which is that the human hand hasn't actually evolved to hold it. Like, you see it online, the specs blow your mind, and you think, this is going to elevate my creative life.
And then you actually take it out of the box.
Yeah, you take it out into the real world, and suddenly you're nursing this horrible forearm cramp, and you're wondering, am I holding this wrong? Is it me?
Well, I mean, we are completely seduced by those polished marketing materials. Like, we look at the perfect studio lighting in the ads, the sheer minimalism of the design, that promise of effortless portability, and we just completely forget that flesh and blood human beings actually have to interact with these perfect little rectangles.
Okay, let's unpack this, because that tension right there, that clash between the aesthetic dream we buy into and, well, the physical reality of our own anatomy, that is the exact mission for our deep dive today.
It's a really fascinating tension to explore.
It is. We're exploring what I like to call the compact camera paradox. It's basically the friction between modern minimalist design and actual human ergonomics. And to guide us, we have a really highly personal, incredibly detailed source today.
Yeah, it's a great piece.
It's a journal entry, actually, dated June 28th, 2026, by a writer named Ang, and it's titled Notes on Photography, Part 240.
And, while the entry focuses strictly on digital cameras, I think the underlying theme is just completely
Oh,
universal.
100%.
There's this massive difference between shopping with your eyes and shopping with your hands. And Ang experienced this firsthand, and those resulting observations act as just a perfect case study about how modern technology looks on a shelf versus how it actually behaves in our grip.
Yeah, and there's a moment early on in the entry where Ang lays out this foundational philosophy about buying tools. It's essentially the golden rule of gear, right?
Right, the try before you buy rule.
Exactly. Whether you're buying a digital camera or, like, a new guitar, you must always try it out a few times before actually paying for it.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds obvious, but think about the last expensive piece of tech you bought.
Most people definitely don't try it first.
They don't. Did you actually hold it first, or did you just scour the spec sheets? You probably watched like 5 different video reviews, obsessed over the megapixel count, checked the processor speed, and just hit add to cart.
Yeah, it's so easy to just fall in love with the data.
Right. But buying a camera without holding it is basically like buying hardcore mountaineering boots just
Yeah.
because they look cool on Instagram.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
You can memorize the tread pattern, the Gore-Tex lining specs all day long, but you won't actually know they carved directly into your Achilles heel until you're like 5 miles up a mountain trail.
What's fascinating here is the specific pairing Ang uses to illustrate this point, linking a digital camera directly to a guitar.
Yeah, that stood out to me too.
Because both are highly tactile tools. They aren't passive consumption devices like a television or a smart speaker.
Right, you're not just sitting back and watching them.
Exactly. They require a physical, almost intimate connection with the user, and that physical connection acts as the bottleneck for your creative output.
It completely dictates the experience.
It does. Like, if you're playing a guitar and the neck profile is just too thick for your specific hand size, your fingers simply cannot transition between chords smoothly.
Yeah, you literally can't play the song.
Right. The music itself suffers. The tool becomes a barrier rather than a conduit. And if the physical connection is compromised like that, the tool fails its primary purpose, regardless of the brand prestige or, the massive price tag.
And the setting where Ang actually puts this golden rule to the test is so interesting. It isn't some high-end, intimidating photography boutique, with classical music playing and salespeople just hovering over your shoulder.
No, it's the exact opposite.
It actually happens during a routine grocery run. Ang just sort of wanders over to the electronics counter and casually picks up a Sony A6400.
Which I think is actually crucial to the purity of the interaction.
Wait, really? How so?
Well, think about it. When you're in a sterile, high-pressure retail store, your adrenaline and your anxiety are slightly elevated.
Oh, sure. You feel like you have to buy something.
Exactly. Your cognitive load is completely focused on the transaction, the salesperson's pitch, the sheer cost of the item. But encountering the device casually, perhaps right next to the produce aisle, It drastically lowers the stakes.
It strips all that pressure away.
It strips it away entirely. It allows for a completely unvarnished physical assessment. You aren't thinking about the prestige of the impending purchase. Your brain is just processing the raw sensation of the object in your hand.
And that raw, honest physical interaction leads to a pretty immediate reality check for Aang. But before we get into exactly what went wrong there, let's just establish some quick context for you listening so we're all on the same page.
Good idea.
So the Sony a6400 is an APS-C mirrorless camera. And if you aren't deep into the photography world, APS-C just refers to the size of the digital sensor inside. It's basically a middle ground that offers professional quality without the massive cost of a full-frame sensor.
Yeah, it's very popular for that exact reason.
But the mirrorless part is what really matters for our ergonomic deep drive today.
Right, because for decades, standard professional cameras were DSLR's digital single-lens reflex cameras.
The big chunky ones.
Right. They contain this complex system of internal mirrors that literally bounced light up into the optical viewfinder so you could see what you were shooting.
And mirrors take up a lot of space.
Exactly. Those mirrors took up a lot of physical space, which meant the camera body itself had to be quite large and thick to house them all. But mirrorless technology removed that entire mechanical mirror box.
So the light just hits the sensor directly.
Pretty much. The camera just feeds a digital video signal straight from the sensor to a tiny little screen in the viewfinder. And removing that physical mirror mechanism allowed engineers to drastically shrink the overall footprint of the camera body.
Which, I mean, sounds like a massive win for the consumer.
Right.
Smaller, lighter, easier to pack.
In theory, yes.
But the moment Aang actually attaches a lens and takes a few test shots in that grocery store aisle, a major flaw reveals itself. The grip on the a6400 is so shallow and so short that Aang's pinky finger is left completely dangling in the air.
It's the classic mirrorless problem.
There is literally nowhere for it to go. And Aang specifically points out having average-sized hands. So, we aren't talking about a giant trying to hold a toy camera here.
Yeah, the dangling pinky is a notorious, almost universally acknowledged issue in the world of compact mirrorless cameras.
It's so common.
It really is. And it's an issue because of basic human biomechanics. I mean, your pinky finger might seem insignificant, but it actually provides a substantial amount of the stabilizing force when you grip a handle.
Okay, I never really thought about that.
Well, try it. If you make a tight fist right now and then release just your pinky finger, you can physically feel the structural integrity of your entire grip diminish.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you're right. I can totally feel that in my arm.
Right. Your forearm muscles have to shift their load to compensate. When that finger is left hanging out in space underneath a camera body, the remaining 3 fingers have to work overtime to pinch and stabilize the device.
So it's basically stressing out the rest of your hand.
Exactly. It introduces immediate, sustained muscular tension in the hand and the wrist.
So Aang naturally assumes, okay, this is just an issue with the entry-level model, right?
Yep.
The a6400 is small. So the next logical step is to test drive the a6700.
Which is supposed to be the upgrade.
Exactly. It's a step up in the lineup, and it's heavily marketed as having this, deeper, chunkier grip, specifically designed to improve ergonomics.
Yet the reality falls completely short of that marketing promise.
It's so disappointing.
Aang discovers that despite the slightly inflated grip, both bodies feel remarkably similar in practice. That pinky finger is still left helplessly dangling.
So they didn't really fix anything.
No, the fundamental architectural philosophy of the camera's minimalist design hasn't actually changed. It has just been marginally scaled up. So the core problem remains completely unsolved.
Which brings us to the absolute breaking point in the journal entry.
Mm-hmm.
The moment where this, slight muscular annoyance crosses the threshold into actual physical harm.
Right, because nobody just holds a camera body without a lens.
Exactly. The real test of a camera isn't just holding the body by itself. It's using it the way it's actually meant to be used out in the field. So Aang tries mounting a telephoto lens to this compact setup.
And this is where the physics of the miniaturized design completely fall apart.
It's a disaster.
It is. A telephoto lens, by necessity of its optics, is long and heavy. So when you attach a massive glass cylinder to a remarkably lightweight, shallow-gripped camera body, you instantly shift the center of gravity far forward.
Oh, away from your body.
Exactly. It moves completely away from the hand that is actually trying to hold the camera.
Aang notes that holding the camera single-handedly with that lens attached became nearly impossible without feeling actual legitimate pain.
And the pain isn't hyperbole, it's literally just physics.
Right.
Think about holding a hammer. If you hold it right up near the heavy metal head, it's pretty easy to maneuver.
Yeah, the balance is right there in your hand.
But if you hold it by the very bottom of the handle, the weight feels drastically heavier because you've created a lever. That is exactly what happens with a small mirrorless camera and a long telephoto lens.
Okay, that makes so much sense.
Those three overburdened fingers aren't just trying to pinch a small box anymore. They are actively fighting against a lever.
So the lens is just pulling everything down.
Yes, the weight of the long lens is pulling the front of the camera aggressively downward, which creates an immense amount of torque on the wrist and the fingers trying to grip that shallow handle. The human hand is just not biomechanically designed to sustain that kind of leveraged weight distribution with only three fingers.
But, I'm struggling to understand why this is such a jarring experience for people, though. I mean, wait, isn't the whole point of a compact camera to be small? Shouldn't we expect to sacrifice a little finger room for portability? Even with a big lens, the total package weighs less than it did 20 years ago, doesn't it?
It's a completely logical question, but I think it ignores how our brains and bodies have adapted to the tools of the past.
How do you mean?
It's about balance, and more importantly, deeply ingrained physical habits. We do not interact with new technology in a vacuum. We bring our entire physiological history of tool usage to every new device we pick up.
Oh, I see.
And Ang is highly self-aware about this, describing a very specific holding style, which is a firm right-hand grip, expecting the camera body itself to take the weight of the system and push back against the palm.
Here's where it gets really interesting. It's all about muscle memory, isn't it? Like, if you grew up shooting with those old-school chunky DSLR cameras, your hand literally adapted to the limitations of that technology.
Absolutely.
Because those cameras had to be big to fit the mirrors inside, the grips were massive. They filled your entire palm, you wrapped your hand around them, and the sheer mass of the camera anchored it to your arm.
They felt substantial.
Right, so when Ang applies that exact same deeply ingrained physical expectation to a hollow, ultralight mirrorless body, the brain basically misfires. Ang describes the feeling as weird and discouraging.
The physical feedback is entirely wrong for what the brain is expecting. The camera isn't providing the counterweight that it anticipates.
It's confusing for your body.
Think of it like driving a manual transmission car every single day for 20 years. You know exactly how the clutch feels, right?
Oh yeah, your foot just moves automatically.
Then suddenly you rent a modern automatic car. What happens the first time you approach a stop sign? Your left foot violently stomps the floorboard, desperately looking for a clutch pedal that isn't there.
Yes, I've done that so many times.
Exactly. Your brain and your nervous system have literally wired themselves to expect a specific physical interaction. It takes immense conscious cognitive effort to stop your left foot from stomping.
And Ang's hand is essentially stomping the floorboard, looking for a giant DSLR grip that simply doesn't exist on the Sony a6400.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it highlights a profound recurring theme in modern consumer technology, which is that the pace of technological evolution almost always outpaces human ergonomics.
Tech moves faster than we do.
Constantly. Engineering teams figure out how to shrink microchips, stack sensors, and thin out batteries. They relentlessly shrink the overall footprint of the device to visually showcase those advancements. But human biomechanics haven't changed at all.
Right.
Our hands are exactly the same size and shape as they were 50 years ago.
We didn't suddenly evolve smaller hands with fewer fingers just because a tech company figured out how to remove an internal mirror box.
Exactly. The assumption from the manufacturers is always that the user will simply adapt to the new form factor.
Just get used to it.
Right. But as Ang's painful experience with the telephoto lens demonstrates, adaptation isn't just a mental shift. It requires overcoming genuine physical discomfort and literally rewiring deeply entrenched neurological pathways.
So if the camera body is actively fighting the user's hand and causing actual pain, why hasn't the manufacturer changed the design?
Well, they'd rather keep it looking pretty.
Yeah. Instead of fixing the camera itself, they've basically birthed an entire industry of aftermarket workarounds. Which leads us to the supposed solutions.
The camera industry is entirely aware of the ergonomic complaints. They know about the pinky.
They have to.
Their solution, however, isn't to fundamentally alter the sleek aesthetic of the camera body. Instead, the market steps in with accessories. Ang specifically evaluates the most common workaround for the dangling pinky, which is adding a bottom extension plate.
What exactly is that?
It's essentially a thick piece of machine metal that you screw into the tripod mount on the bottom of the camera. It artificially adds, an extra half-inch or inch to the height of the body, finally giving that dangling pinky a solid place to rest.
And to Eng's credit, the journal entry is incredibly objective here. Eng admits that the extension plate is a highly effective solution.
Right, it does the job.
It mathematically solves the geometry problem, it neutralizes the leverage, and gives all four fingers a home. But then, and this is the absolute kicker for me, Eng completely rejects it anyway.
And the rejection has nothing to do with functionality. Aang rejects the plate because, as the entry states, it does not look right, let alone feel right.
It's the ultimate compromise conundrum. Have you ever hacked a gadget to make it work, only to hate using it anyway?
Oh, definitely.
It's like buying a sleek sports car and having to strap this bulky aftermarket bumper to it just to drive it comfortably. It ruins the whole vibe. Or, it's like buying the thinnest, most beautifully engineered, premium smartphone on the market.
Oh, the phone case analogy is perfect.
It looks like a glowing slab of obsidian.
Yeah.
But it's so incredibly slippery that you drop it twice on the first day. So what do? You immediately have to wrap it in a thick, ugly $10 rubber case just so you can physically hold the thing without destroying it.
And suddenly it's not premium anymore.
Exactly. Yes, technically you solved the problem. You can hold the phone,
Yeah.
but you've completely destroyed the sleek aesthetic and the premium feel that made you desire the phone in the first place. You've sacrificed the art to buy back the basic functionality.
And the psychological friction of that compromise is huge.
It really is.
You are purchasing a premium creative tool based partially on its design ethos and its ability to inspire you. When you are immediately forced to bolt a block of third-party metal to the bottom of it just to achieve baseline comfort, it breaks the illusion.
It just feels wrong.
The device no longer feels like a cohesive, perfectly engineered tool built for a professional. It feels like a patchwork fix. It feels flawed. And Aang's reaction to this psychological friction is really the core insight of the entire piece.
Yeah, let me grab the exact quote from the journal, actually, because it perfectly crystallizes this whole deep dive. Aang writes, "If you do not feel comfortable holding your camera all day, you are probably not going to bring it out to shoot."
That is the ultimate, unavoidable truth of any creative endeavor right there.
It's so simple, but so true.
We can obsess over technical specifications all day long. We can argue about autofocus algorithms, dynamic range, megapixel counts, and highly effective aftermarket L brackets. None of it means absolutely anything if the emotional and physical friction of using the device keeps it sitting in a drawer.
Because it's literally not getting used.
Right. If the mere thought of picking up the camera immediately brings to mind the sensation of a cramped forearm, wrist torque, or the visual annoyance of an ugly extension plate, human nature dictates that you will simply leave it at home. The barrier to entry for your own creativity becomes just too high to bother with.
It's the stark difference between a tool that effortlessly invites you to use it and a tool that you have to actively convince yourself to endure.
That's a great way to summarize it.
And for Aang, the Sony a6400 falls permanently into the latter category. Because of this irreconcilable clash between the minimalist form and the ergonomic function, the journal entry ends with a definitive, honestly, quietly disappointed decision. Aang says, "It is a pity, but I can now safely cross the Sony a6400 off my wish list."
It is a highly rational conclusion, honestly.
I think so too.
Aang approached that grocery store display, open to the experience, discovered a fundamental incompatibility between the tool's architecture and the reality of the human hand, and just chose not to force a relationship that would inevitably cause physical and creative discomfort.
So what does this all mean for us? We started with a casual trip to grab groceries, right? And we ended up dissecting the biomechanics of the human hand and the psychology of consumer tech.
Quite a journey.
It really was. We are currently living in an era where technology is frequently designed for the eyes that buy it, rather than the hands that actually use it. And the ultimate takeaway here is that you should never underestimate the power of your own physical comfort.
It's not just a bonus feature.
Not at all. Whether you're buying a camera, a guitar, a new keyboard, or even just a computer mouse, the spec sheet is only half the story. The way a tool physically interacts with your body isn't just a luxury. It is the absolute deciding factor in whether that tool helps you create something meaningful or if it just becomes an incredibly expensive paperweight. Ergonomics dictate utility. Period.
This raises a really important question, I think, about the broader trajectory of industrial design.
Oh, where are we heading with this?
Well, If manufacturers keep prioritizing how sleek a device looks in an online advertisement over how it actually balances in a human hand, the friction is only going to grow.
Yeah.
I wonder if we are steadily approaching a breaking point.
What kind of breaking point?
A massive cultural pushback where consumers completely reject this obsession with thinness and minimalism. We might be on the verge of a renaissance of ugly but perfectly comfortable technology.
I would honestly love that.
Right. A
Yeah.
world where we finally demand that our tools adapt to us rather than forcing our bodies to constantly adapt to them.
That is definitely something to keep in mind the next time you find yourself lusting after a gadget that looks like a seamless, perfect block of glass and metal.
Yeah.
Before you hit buy, based on the marketing photos, ask yourself, is this going to inspire my workflow or is it just going to give me tendonitis? Do
Yeah.
yourself a favor, go find one in the real world, pick it up and see what your pinky finger has to say about it.